Hey, what's up everybody? It's Marc Adamo here from ADPTR Audio, and today's a great day because I get to show you our new plugin. Sculpt is our next generation broadband dynamics processor, which offers new levels of transparency and flexibility in traditional compression, along with some entirely new DSP, intuitive UI, and of course extensive metering. Under the hood, you get 4 dynamics processors. You've got upwards compression and expansion, downwards compression and expansion, a very natural sounding transient processor, and this entirely new thing we call tonal sculpting, which offers broadband EQ correction and enhancement. At its core, we've got an entirely new algorithm for envelope detection, which functions much more like the human ear than traditional compressors do. This allows it to resolve bass frequencies with near zero harmonic distortion. Now I know what you're thinking, just demo the thing already, so let's go on a tour.
Sculpt has 4 dynamic processors: upwards compression, downwards compression, tone sculpting, and transient processing. Each of the compressors can also work as an expander. Each module has a main control. Click on the module to access the detailed parameters. Modules have their own preset menu. Click on the preset name to see the full list and additional functionality. Each module has a bypass button. Solo to hear the processing in isolation. Each module has a range control. This limits the maximum amount of gain change to the value selected in dBs. There is also a global range slider next to the output meter. This controls the global gain change for all modules in the same way. The output meter shows the current gain as a white line, plus the amount of gain change relative to the original signal. Gain reduction is shown in blue, and gain increase is shown in brown. Switch between stereo mode and mid-side mode by toggling the icon. Toggle the label to solo the channel. Below we find the master bypass. This is the best way to bypass, as you won't hear any jumps or lags in the audio stream that are caused by Sculpt's high latency. There's a master mix knob for parallel processing, and a master mid-side knob to bias the processing of all modules between the mid and side channels. At the center, it processes the full signal. The history graph follows the same color format as the output meter, with the white line showing the current gain. Gain reduction is shown in blue, and increase is shown in brown. You can adjust the graph to fit your audio in several ways. Drag the bar up or down to move the dB scale. Drag it sideways to expand or reduce the scale. You can change the time window by clicking on the menu. Select from various time windows in seconds, or lock it to a specific amount of bars, or turn it off altogether. The lower display is a combination of spectrum meter and EQ graph. With the compressors, you get a sidechain EQ. With the tone and transient modules, you get an emphasis EQ. They all offer 4 editable bands. There's a low shelf, a parametric, a high shelf, and a tilt. Use the scroll wheel to edit the band width or slope. Command-click to reset the band. These can be bypassed individually with Option-click, or globally using the bypass button. You can edit the global amount by dragging the scale percentage from the maximum 100% all the way down to -100%. This will invert the EQ shape. The spectrum meter has two modes, absolute and relative. Absolute shows the current gain as a white line, plus the amount of gain change relative to the original signal. Gain reduction is shown in blue and increase is shown in brown. You can change the reaction speed between fast, medium and slow, and switch the input monitoring between mid and side. Relative mode is an interesting new way to look at how gain change is affecting the spectral balance. The flat white line represents the input signal, and it only displays actual gain change relative to the input signal. This way, you only see the relative increase or decrease across the spectrum. Below the master controls, we find the auto gain panel. You can manually edit the gain here, and when you switch to auto gain, Sculpt will do this automatically. We'll take a detailed look at how the auto gain system works later in this video. Finally, we go to the toolbar at the menu. This displays the preset menu. Click on a preset name to open the menu and reveal all the save and load options. You can load 4 different presets in the A, B, C, D slots and compare them. You can copy and paste between preset slots, and you can undo or redo your edit steps. There are 4 main settings that you may need to tweak. You can disable the Transient Module, and this will reduce latency by about 100 milliseconds. You can switch the sidechain between the internal EQ and an external input. And change oversampling between 1 and 8x, and switch the latency profile between regular and full. The difference here is that full latency is more precise and accurate. Use the cog menu to change the plugin window size and select a different color scheme. You can also replay the tour and turn the hints on or off.
Now that we've had a quick look over the interface, it's time to get into the details. Sculpt has 2 compressors. It has an upwards and a downwards compressor, and these can be switched to work as expanders as well. If you're not familiar with the sounds of upwards compression, you're in for a treat. And if you haven't really used an expander before, I'm going to show you a couple of tricks with them, both as a creative enhancer and as a problem solver. So let's get into the details.
Let's start with the upwards compressor. This can be used to bring the gain up of the quietest parts of the signal. It doesn't affect the peaks. The main control is ratio. All the other parameters are available in the context bar. Here we can adjust the threshold, ratio, knee, and bound. Let's have a listen and get a little heavy-handed just to make a point. Use the bound control to limit the amount of gain change applied to the quietest parts of the signal, so they don't get sucked upwards. This can make things sound a little more natural. By default, it's in the middle, so rotate left to leave the quietest bits untouched, and rotate right to suck every last drop to the top. You can see that the envelope section can be turned on and off. When it's off, this means that Sculpt is applying instant gain change to the signal on a sample by sample basis. Our ears are accustomed to the rhythm produced by the compressor's envelope section, so we can use it to put some swing into the sound. AR adapt control allows the envelope to adapt its timing to different frequencies. When set to 100%, attack and release times become fully frequency dependent, with the compressor reacting more slowly to lower frequency content. This produces considerably more natural sounding results than using fixed durations. You can apply makeup gain if you like, or use the auto gain to match the input and output levels. The MS process allows you to emphasize the processing towards the mid or side signals. This way, you can draw the sound into the middle or create some extra width by applying it to the sides. There's zero phase issues, and everything sums to mono perfectly. We can switch the compressor to expander mode by clicking here. We can use this to reduce the quietest parts of the signal, producing results that range from subtle transient emphasis to reverb reduction and full-on gating. The down compressor has the same parameter set as the up compressor, so let's get straight into demoing it with a beat. Sculpt's envelopes can operate with instantaneous attack and release times. This makes it ideal for reducing peaks. When coupled with the auto gain system, you don't have to rebalance the levels with the makeup gain when you reduce the peaks. Next, let's play with the mid-side processing. Let's push it to the center and then see how wide we can get it. Let's experiment with the sidechain EQ to see how it influences the way Sculpt reacts and how that shapes the spectral balance. First up, let's reduce the influence the kick has, making it sound a little cleaner. Next, we're going to increase the influence of the hi-hats. This pushes them back a bit, so they sit better. You'll notice that no matter which parameter I'm editing, Sculpt's auto gain system keeps the levels consistent, either when I mix the wet and dry signals or when bypassing.
Let's talk about Sculpt's auto gain system. Now, we know the problem with compressors is you dial it up, you lower the threshold, you increase the ratio, and your volume drops. You reach for makeup gain to rebalance your sound, and this can be a cyclical process as you dial in the right amount of compression. With Sculpt, we created a one-touch system where Sculpt will analyze your audio for a few seconds, and then once it's locked in, it will match your input and output levels in a consistent manner. Now, the second really cool thing about this is how it integrates into the preset system. All the presets in Sculpt have been designed using auto gain, so if you've got auto gain enabled in Sculpt, you can happily smash through the presets and Sculpt will automatically adjust the threshold level so you hear the preset exactly as it's intended to sound. while maintaining your volume levels so you don't have to constantly adjust the sound of the volume in the mix. So let's go and see how that sounds.
Auto gain can help us level match the dry and wet signals. It works by analysing the input signal for a few seconds. Click the Analyze button to begin. When it has enough data, the timer turns orange. Click the Analyze button once more to end analysis. We can see the gain change above. It's increasing the preset by 7.8 dBs. Now we can hear them on a level playing field. Without auto gain, we can hear the preset has a lower level than the dry signal. We can also use auto gain to audition presets. This automatically adjusts the dry signal to hit sculpt at the intended threshold and balance the wet and dry signals automatically. Let's hear 4 different presets and keep an eye on the amount of gain change that is automatically applied to each preset. Sculpt has 4 auto gain profiles per instance, so you can use these for different sections of your track and automate the switch if needed. Profiles are stored with the DAW session, or you can save them and load them into new sessions.
The third processor in Sculpt is called the Sculpt Module. This is an exciting new area of research that we've been doing for the last 5 years, and it enables you to rebalance the tone spectrum of your audio using an EQ-like interface. Now, it's not actually an EQ, and it doesn't sound like an EQ, so the best way to explain it is to let you hear it and see it.
At first, Tone Sculpt may seem like a bit of an enigma. So the best way to get a feel for it is just hear it in action. We're going to use a low shelf filter to shape the balance between bass and the rest of the mix. Let's grab a low shelf filter. Now let's move it up and give those bass frequencies more prominence. This is a good time to use the relative spectrum meter because it shows us how the gain changes across the spectrum. You can see increase in brown and reduction in blue. Now let's dial out some bass. We can use a scaler to invert the direction of the gain, just like a mirror image. And let's go extreme. Now that you've heard it, you can hear it sounds different to dynamic EQ because it's working on the whole broadband spectrum. Now let's take a look at the detail parameter. One way to think of it is like a Photoshop filter that adds drama, the kind that can spice up a boring photo with grain, texture, and vibe. From an audio perspective, when you increase the details, you're telling Sculpt to boost the resonant tones. This way, you can push it to bring out details and make it sound a little more exciting. We can also dial it back in the other direction. You can reduce the amount of resonant tones, and this will reward the noisier elements of your sound. This can really bring out the paper texture of hi-hats, snares, and other noisy elements in the mix. It can make a mix sound more percussive and syncopated. Let's check it out, starting softly, and then, pushing it well into the realms of sound design. Details works independently of everything else in the tone section, so you can use it with or without the Tone Sculpt EQ section. Let's take an 808 loop with noisy hi-hats and use the tone tilt to boost the highs and reduce the bass. This is going to produce some artifacts, driven by the interplay between the noisy hi-hats and the deep bass. It sounds like a kind of lo-fi distortion that may or may not be desirable. It depends if you're looking for transparency or coloration.
The fourth processor is the Transient Module. Now, we believe this is the most natural sounding transient module going. Whether you want to increase the presence or soften the attacks on things, this one works a treat. Now, there's some more detailed parameters in the context menu. Let's go and see how they work. So this brings us to the end of the tour, but it's really just the start of seeing what Sculpt can do. We'll be making loads more videos showcasing its sounds, and you can download the 2-week demo and try it for yourself at the Plugin Alliance website. If you subscribe to the Mega Bundle or the Mix and Master Bundle, it's in your account already, so download it and have a go and let us know what you think in the comments. So for now, happy mixing.